Hello! Harrow the Ninth, Act 4. This was a very short act. I'm pretty sure it was the shortest in the entire book. Like, looking here, you can kind of see the lines on the edge of the book. You can kind of see the lines that divide the acts. Yeah, it does look like Act 4 was the shortest. Act 2 was pretty short too, but Act 4 was the shortest. I read it in just 2 sittings. But that does not mean it was the one I have the least to say about. Far from it. This act was dense with stuff going on. Even though it really was just like a handful of scenes, I guess I'm gonna start at the beginning, which is that we get some closure of a sort on some stuff from the first book. Namely, we encounter here, or rather, Harrow encounters, literally all of the survivors of Canaan House. Uh, she encounters Camilla Hecht, Coronabeth Tridentarius, and Judith Deuteros. And I'm pretty sure, unless I'm forgetting something, that is the full list of people whose deaths we didn't explicitly see in the first book. Or at least whose dead bodies we didn't see. Because we didn't see the deaths of Judith's Cavalier, whose name I forget, and I don't think we saw the deaths of Abigail and Magnus, but, like, we saw their bodies, so they're pretty definitively dead. And everyone else we saw die on screen. So yeah, there's actually no chance that anyone else is alive. Well, I say that, but, like, Palamedes is kind of alive, as it turns out, so maybe someone else is too. My deep hope, which I do not think will come true, remains that Isaac and Jean-Marie are somehow alive. In particular, Jean-Marie, because I found her delightful, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up. Yeah, we get closure on the first book in that regard, but we also get a bunch of further mysteries. It seems that a lot more happened in the, like, immediate aftermath of the first book than I suspected. Like, the very, very short amount of time that got skipped between the end of Gideon the Ninth and the beginning of Harrow the Ninth was apparently packed. Like, basically everything in this book is, like, trying to decode what happened in that, like, 1 week period that we don't have on page yet. And we get we get some pretty big hints from the survivors of the first book. So first of all of them got picked up by Blood of Eden, and now they're working for Blood of Eden, except Judith, who is, like, a prisoner. Like, Judith isn't willingly working for them, but it seems like Camilla and maybe Coronabeth are. We don't get a ton out of Coronabeth in this scene, so it's not super clear if she's more in Judith's position or Camilla's position. But Camilla definitely seems to be, like, fully working for the Blood of Eden. And the way she and Palamedes talk, it kind of seems like either she was always working for the Blood of Eden, and so was Palamedes, even before they arrived at Canaan House, or she joined the Blood of Eden after the fact, but it kind of sounds like whatever it is they're doing, Palamedes would have approved, and would have been on the same side, because Palamedes really judges Harrow rather harshly for becoming a lictor, and there's some weird stuff going on between Palamedes and Harrow, and I remember this from the first book. I remember that Gideon, being a himbo, um, did not really pay that much attention to what was going on between Palamedes and Harrow, but it was clear from the first book that those two were like communicating and exchanging ideas on a higher level than basically everyone else in Canaan House. Some pretty like high concept stuff was being explored by those two. Um, Mostly off screen, I think. And Palamedes here talks about how he and Harrow had like a plan, and I don't remember this. Maybe I'm just forgetting this, but I think we don't know what this is. I think this was like something that happened off screen, where Palamedes and Harrow hatched some kind of plan. But whatever the plan was, it didn't involve Harrow becoming a lictor, because Palamedes is horrified by that discovery. And by the fact that Gideon has been lictorized into Harrow. So I'm assuming that when Judith says that one of the lictors is a traitor, that one of the lictors is actually a mole who is going to turn against the Emperor and is actually working for the BOE, I think she's talking about Harrow herself. I think that Harrow, unbeknownst to her current self, is the mole. I think that the whole grand plan that Harrow has, like with the letters to herself and all that, like the plan of the Harrow before she changed her own memories, is maybe the plan that's going to lead to the Emperor's death, because we know that the Emperor is going to get murdered at the end of this book, because we keep counting down to the Emperor's murder at the start of every chapter. So, yeah, that's my current theory. My current working theory is that it's Harrow. I don't think it's Ianthe, although it could be. And I definitely don't think it's any of the old lictors. Like, the only real candidate other than Harrow in my mind is Ianthe. Well, I suppose it could be quote-unquote Ortis, by which I mean Gideon the First. It could be him, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's Harrow. Anyway, God, there's a lot going on here. But there's more that happens during Harrow's encounter with Palamedes, other than him talking about bad romance novels that he's stuck reading in the afterlife forever. Yeah, what happens is the sleeper, the mysterious person in a hazmat suit with a shotgun, okay, who is present in Harrow's new fictional version of the events of the first book, who wasn't actually present in the first book. Yeah, the sleeper shows up in Palamedes' mind palace and breaks down the door, and then Harrow wakes up and comes out of the river. And then the narrator of the book, who is not Harrow, even though this book is written from Harrow's point of view, but the narrator is not Harrow, the narrator says to Harrow in second person that what she doesn't know is that Palamedes saw me. And I am now 99% convinced that the narrator of this book is Gideon. I'd even go so far as to say 100%. Like, I cannot imagine any outcome other than the narrator of this book and also the sleeper being essentially Gideon within Harrow's mind, like Gideon's soul or mind or whatever you want to call it, existing within Harrow's subconscious. Um, so yeah, I'm fairly confident in that. I'm reminded of the way that the POV shifted at the very end of the first book, the way that like once Gideon died and got absorbed by Harrow, the POV shifted to Harrow, but it didn't really because it actually stayed on Gideon, but now Gideon was experiencing Harrow's point of view because she was inside Harrow's mind, like that whole thing. So I think that so far actually this series has only had one point of view character. Despite appearances to the contrary. Well, that's actually not true. I tell a lie, because at the end of this section, we do actually get a chapter from Yanthe's perspective, which I'll get to in a moment. But yeah, so Gideon as narrator, basically confirmed at this point, which is exciting because it means Gideon is still alive. I mean, she still exists as like a coherent whole personality to some extent, at least. Like, she hasn't been completely subsumed into Harrow the way all the other Cavaliers appear to have been into their respective lictors. Which explains why Harrow doesn't actually function as a lictor. She isn't one, actually. Like, she's only gained some of the benefits of lictorhood, not all, because Gideon hasn't been fully integrated. Anyway, so that was a cool scene. What else is going on here? Yeah, so in the Canaan house flashbacks, is Dulcinea not Cytheria in this version of events? That can't be true, because Harrow right now in the Mithraeum, in like the current timeline, is aware that Dulcinea was Cytheria. Like, when she's talking to Yanthe at one point, she like refers to Cytheria by the name Septimus as like a code word for her. So they're both aware that Cytheria was pretending to be Dulcinea. But within Harrow's flashbacks to Canaan House, multiple things contradict that at this point. So first of all, Protesilaus is clearly fully alive and himself, which he never was in the first book. And secondly, Dulcinea talks to Harrow about her childhood growing up with Palamedes, which is very specifically a thing that Cytheria did not know about. That was like her big mistake, like the thing that gave away that she wasn't the real Dulcinea, was that she didn't know about Dulcinea's relationship with Palamedes. And she like fucked up basically by by acting like she didn't know Palamedes. So the fact that Dulcinea in Harrow's flashbacks is actively doing the one thing that she specifically failed to do in the first book, and the fact that Protesilaus is acting like a fully functional human being, both of these things are weird, right? Like, again, is she not Cytheria? I don't know. It's weird stuff going on in this fake history. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, moving on. moving on, we get to, actually before we move forward, I'm going to focus, before we move to the rest of the main timeline here, I'm going to focus on the final flashback in this section, where we kind of learn what Harrow did to herself. We don't learn the details, but we do learn that it was actual, literal, physical brain surgery. Like, I've been assuming this whole time that the false memories are like a psychological thing. Like, that Harrow either sort of built up these walls of fake memory in her head to protect herself from the guilt of what she'd done in the first book, or that she had somehow used necromancy to purposefully cloud her own mind, like alter the fabric of her soul or something. But no, she just opened up her skull and, like, physically performed brain surgery on herself. What? This actually makes me think that, that Harrow does maybe have full lictor abilities, because we did actually see her using lictor abilities at the end when she was fighting Cytherea at the end of Gideon. So it makes me think that what if Harrow does, for example, have lictoral healing, but she's somehow found a way to turn it off so that her own brain surgery wouldn't be undone by her lictoral healing? And as an unfortunate consequence of having to do that, she also doesn't have the healing in general for other kinds of injuries. That would be interesting, if the fact that she doesn't have healing is like an unfortunate unintended side effect of having to do something in order to make this work. But that's just that's pure speculation at this point. Yeah, anyway, back to the main meat of this chapter, which is the arrival of the resurrection beast and the... what are they called? Not harvesters. Harbingers? Are they called harbingers? No, that doesn't sound right. What's the word they use for the creatures? There's like the bugs that serve the bugs that serve the resurrection beasts. Heralds! Heralds, that was it. The heralds of resurrection beast number 7 arrive and start attacking the Mithraeum. And this leads to several interesting developments. First of all, we learn a lot more about the river. We learn, like, about its layers and the fact that at the bottom of the river there's, like, these gaping holes that lead to basically, like, hell, I guess. Or at least they lead to some kind of ineffable afterlife, like a step beyond the afterlife, which even John doesn't know the nature of. And the only way that there is to kill a resurrection beast is to shove its soul into one of those holes, like literally physically push it into one of them. Well, physically, I mean, it's all happening in, like, the spiritual realm, but kind of physically, I guess. Physically push its spirit. The river is weird, because, like, they do things physically in there, but they're not actually physically in there, except when they are. Very confusing. But I think I'm following what's going on with the river. Bold words that I will regret, probably. But yeah. Yeah, when the heralds arrive, we get one of my favorite little details that I caught, which is another one of those fun moments where, in a different book, this would be a hint to us, the readers, as to the grand plot twist of the story. But we already know the grand plot twist of the story going in. Like, we already know about Gideon. And so this little hint here is like, it's like a wink and a nudge to the audience. Anyway, what I'm referring to is the call signs. So we find out that all the lictors have call signs, and Harrow and Yanthe do not know what the call signs are. Like, they don't know their own call signs, and they don't know what the basis for the call signs is. And so before they know what the call signs are, they hear John introduce himself as JG. That's his call sign. And then we hear Ortis introduce himself as GP. And then Yanthe is like, I don't know what my call sign is. And then the Emperor is like, oh, your call sign is obviously IN. And then based on IN, Harrow obviously intuits that IN is Yanthe Nabirius, like the name of the lictor followed by the name of their cavalier. And so then Harrow introduces herself as HO, and Yanthe sniggers, because Yanthe is by this point aware that Harrow thinks that her cavalier was named Ortis. I don't know if Yanthe knows why Harrow thinks this. I don't know if she knows, like, the nature of Harrow's brain surgery. I mean, I'm sure she assumes it's because of that. Anyway, it's also implied here that John has picked up on it. Like, John has picked up that Harrow isn't actually aware of her cavalier's name, because he's like, Harrow's call sign is H, let's just go with H. And then Harrow is like, no, it's HO. Anyway, my point is that here we have two little details that are fun. First of all, Ortis actually says his call sign is GP, Gideon Pyra, because his name is Gideon. And Harrow actually hears him say GP. And the reason Harrow hears him say GP instead of OP, even though every other time her brain, like, automatically censors Gideon's name into Ortis, the reason is that at that point in the conversation, Harrow doesn't know how the call signs work yet. And so her brain can't automatically censor it, because her brain hasn't identified the G as being an initial. Yeah, that was like I don't know why, but I just felt really cool reading that, because it wasn't explained to the reader at all. You're just expected to intuit what just happened, and I like that. But the other thing we get here is that John's call sign is JG. Who the hell is G? We learn towards the end here that the person who is referred to as AL was John's bodyguard. And also that AL isn't her actual name, but that her actual name has basically been forgotten. So, is G the same person as AL? I mean, when I hear G, my first thought is Gideon, but, like, it would be weird if John's cavalier was named Gideon, because there's a lictor named Gideon? Right? Like, that would be... It would be weird if that happened, right? So what's actually going on here? I don't know. Let me just find that chapter to make sure that I'm right about that. Whatever. Okay, I can't find it. Never mind. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about that scene. The other important thing that happens here is that Harrow admits that she opened the tomb to John, and John just is like, oh, you poor thing, of course you didn't open the tomb, no one could open the tomb. And Harrow kind of believes him, but, like, no, of course he's wrong. Of course she really opened the tomb. I'm not buying that. No. And what else? Yeah, okay, so the one final thing I want to talk about in this section is one of my favorite quotes by anyone ever, which is by Mercy Morn, where everyone makes fun of her for drawing something poorly. And she says, "I hate you all. I have hated you for millennia. Except you, my lord." "Thanks," said God. "I merely want to put you in jail," said his lictor, now meditative, "and fill up the jail with acid once for every time you made a frivolous remark, or ate peanuts in a cohort admiralty meeting, or said, 'What would I know? I am only God.' Then at the end of 1,000 years you would say, 'Mercy, I have learned not to do any of these things, because I hated the acid you put on me.' And I would say, 'That is why I did it, Lord. I did it for you and for your empire.' I often think about this." Just that whole sequence made me love Mercy Morn so much more. I mean, I already like Mercy Morn as a character, but now I have an incredible appreciation for her after that. After that whole speech to, again, God. Mercy Morn is a fun character, actually, in general. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about this particular section. Like I said, a lot to say considering how short the section was. But we'll see if I can even fit Act 5 into a single video, because Act 5 presumably is going to have the most stuff to talk about per page because it's the climax of the book. But also, it's the longest section of the book by a pretty significant margin. Like, Act 1 is pretty long compared to 2, 3, and 4, but Act 5 is definitely bigger than Act 1. So Act 5 is like, yeah, definitely the biggest part of this book. Funnily enough, that's pretty handy actually, because I'm guessing that means that it will take me probably a few more days to read Act 5, and by the time I do, The Lost Metal will be out, and I'll be able to start reading that. Which is a weird thing for me to say in this video, because for you watching this, chances are I uploaded my Lost Metal videos like 2 months ago at this point. But The Lost Metal, as of this recording, is not out yet. It is November 9th. So, yeah, that was Act 4 of Harrow the Ninth. Things are getting weird and exciting. I mean, they already were, but they're getting more weirder and more exciting. And I am incredibly excited for this Act 5. I really cannot wait to see what happens. This book is an incredible ride, and it has maintained a level of quality that I am genuinely impressed by. Yeah. See ya next week for that. Bye.